Hello, everyone. It is July 9th, 2025, and this is going to be part two of my two-part series on Was Winston Churchill the real bad guy of World War II? In the first one, I examined the historical claim, which I might, if you go back and watch the video, if you want the nutshell version, it's a nonsensical claim. No, he is not. It is, yes, World War II is Adolf Hitler's fault. Um, Adolf Hitler's not the only one to blame. He's definitely the primary one to blame. In no way, shape, or form could it be considered Winston Churchill's fault. Um, but the question now, why on the MAGA right is this idea metastasizing? Why is this infection of intellectual absurdity spreading? It's two primary reasons, and then sort of a third reason I might get into. First of the primary reasons is just good old fashioned anti Semitism. There's always a market for anti Semitism. On the left, you see it with the Free Palestine stuff. You see it on the college campuses and all the kids yelling globalize the intifada and things like that. And they're chasing Jewish students around colleges and things like that. And on the right, you're seeing Candace Owens is big one pushing it. You're seeing it more and more for Tucker Carlson. He always describes Volodymyr Zelensky, who is a Jew, using as a rat. Which, by the way, is exactly how the Nazis described them. The idea was that Jews were a form of rodent. And you see Tucker Carlson very much making that same comparison with Zelensky and other Jewish figures. So there's just a market for anti-Semitism. And so, well, if it's really Churchill's fault, then it wasn't Hitler's fault. It wasn't Hitler's fault. That means Hitler's persecution of the Jews wasn't all that bad. So it's kind of a way to whitewash the greatest anti-Semitic movement in human history. Which is really saying something. There's been a lot of them. And also one of the most unbelievable crimes against humanity in general, which is the Holocaust. So that's reason one. What's reason two? Reason two is political ideology. The MAGA right is been trying to adopt an isolationist foreign policy. This is increasingly putting them at odds with Trump because Trump is not nearly the isolationist they all thought he was. There's a problem, though, with isolationism in America, which is that one of the great examples in American history, or one of the great moments in American history, is America's involvement in Europe during World War II and in the immediate aftermath. Obviously, we pull off a series of spectacular military campaigns in North Africa, in Sicily, in Italy, in France. We have the air war, we have the Battle of the Atlantic, all these kind of amazing things. When the war is over, you have the Berlin airlift, you have the Marshall Plan, you have the rebuilding of Europe, you have the Bretton Woods trade system, all these things. And here's the funny thing. They all work. They work really well. Now, people will show up and say, well, this was less than perfect and that was less than perfect, so it's all garbage. That's ridiculous. These were hugely successful things. There's really no parallel for them in history, at least none that I'm aware of. If you are on the MAGA right and you want a hardcore isolationist foreign policy, think J.D. Vance, who wants nothing to do with European security at all. Winston Churchill's a problem for you because Winston Churchill was the one saying we need American power, we've got to get the United States into this war, we've got to get them on our side. And then thanks to the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor and Hitler's absolutely idiotic decision to follow up the attack by declaring war on the United States, he gets it. And the United States comes in and it goes just the way he thought it would. It is expensive for Britain in many ways. That's a different topic. The United States, we took our pound of flesh, and our pound of flesh was that the British Empire was going to have to dissolve. And Churchill very much understood that was the price, and he paid it because he knew it would save Britain. And he was right, by the way. But if you're this isolationist, you've got a problem in that this hero on the American right, Winston Churchill, is a shining example of what can happen when the United States gets involved and stays involved, about how effective we can be, and how we can overcome hardship and difficulty and failure, and things can go wrong and things can go bad, but we can keep trying and we can get to something that is so much better than what we started with. Winston Churchill, historically on the right, has been extremely popular. He was a bulwark of Western values. He stood for capitalism. He stood for democracy. He stood for Christianity. He stood for civil rights. He stood for all the things that we believe in. He stood against communism. Everyone remembers him most famously for his stand against fascism. But remember, after World War II, fascism is destroyed and communism is the great evil scourging mankind. And he is an indefatigable opponent of that. Which is why historically he's not been as popular on the left, because they're like, well, darn, he opposed all the socialists. Yeah, he did. And his criticisms were quite correct. On the right, you have a problem in that someone that we have canonized on the right is anti-isolationist. He was the guy who said, get the United States involved and they will make everything better, and he was proven right. So you need to tear apart Winston Churchill because he is the counterweight example for the isolationists. So from a political ideological perspective, Churchill is a big problem and has to be destroyed, and that is why I think, my opinion, that this is happening. And there is a third reason, which is just good old-fashioned opposition. A lot of people on the MAGA right, with cause I might add, they feel that they have been lied to, ignored, marginalized, disrespected, been condescended to. By the way, there's a lot of truth to that. They're not wrong about that. But part of the reaction you're seeing from that, and again, a lot of what they say has been done to them has been done. If you're at the New York Times and everybody in Oklahoma died, I doubt they would shed a tear. But part of that is, well, we want to throw out all the conventional wisdom because we think you're all liars and we don't believe anything you've said. And you all told us that Hitler's the bad guy and Churchill was the good guy, so that must be a lie too. One of just an endless series of lies. So that sort of opened the door for these types of conspiracy theories. So I have some sympathy for where they're coming from on that. Because they are looked down on. There is this level of condescension, and most people don't try to take any time to get to know it or understand it or see where they're coming from on anything, and understand that they have some legitimate grievances, and they have some legitimate points. Not on this topic, not at all, but on some other topics they do. So that's what I would say the third reason. The main reason, though, I really do think is he is a counterweight to isolationism. If you are Tucker Carlson, your job right now is you are trying to help the Qataris, the Iranians, and the Russians. You need American power rolled back. You need the Americans out of the Middle East. You need the American support out of Ukraine. You need to convince Americans that interventionism and European security in particular are bad. Winston Churchill's a problem because he showed just how successful the United States can be, and that frankly the United States was on the right side of history. We're on the right side of history in World War II. We're on the right side of history in World War I. And so that is a problem, so you've got to tear them down. So that is my theory as to why. I would love to hear your theories. Obviously, the last video was very fact-intensive. This one's been very opinion-intensive. I would love to hear your opinions, hear where you think I'm right, hear where you think I'm wrong, and let's have a good debate, polite, civil debate, please, in the comment section. All right, I hope everyone has a good day. Bye-bye.